To catch all the latest episodes, be sure to subscribe and ring that bell. Hey guys, I'm Russell Lehman. Welcome to HAG, Hi Autistic Guy. Today I'm going to be interviewing Erica Daniels, who is the founder of Hope Grows for Autism, which is an organization whose mission is to educate people in the autism community about the benefits of cannabis. She's also the mother to her autistic son, Leo, and the author of the book Cooking with Leo. We're going to talk about cannabis. We're going to talk about our frustrations with the social stigmas surrounding it. We're going to talk about our frustrations within the autism community and the divide between self-advocates and parents and doctors. A lot of good stuff. So welcome to the program, Erica Daniels. And I did want to discuss how self-advocates and parents especially, how we can bridge that gap. What do you think that the biggest hindrance to that is right now, and how do we get around it?
So, I mean, again, listening to your Autism as a Gift post was really insightful for me. I'm almost afraid to say anything because I don't want to offend anyone, which I don't think is good, right? Because then we're just not talking about it. So sometimes and it's like the same thing with cannabis. You're afraid to say anything because it's like, these touchy topics. But Leo's 16 now, and I'm just his mom, but I feel like, I've been so close with him and on this journey with him. And I feel like I have some rights, right? And also, it's difficult because he can't always speak for himself. Yeah. So that's a challenging place to be also. But I really want to understand what it's like to be an adult, and like talking to you, is so insightful for me, and to be able to help him too. I want to understand that, but I would also like to be understood, right? In the way that I came from, and I have been through the process, right? So I came from a place where I was like, oh my God, like autism, what is that? I don't even know what I didn't know what it was. I was devastated, completely devastated. And then on top of it, Leo was struggling and unhappy most of the time. So I see that side where parents are saying, autism's not a gift. But then, once, I don't know if it was within me or whatever, and actually a lot of it had to do with Leo and I cooking together. Once I discovered the gifts, not that just he has, but that we have together, and that, life can be different, and different is beautiful. Yeah. And, it's just like, I have such a more fulfilling experience in life because of autism. And it's like this word, almost like we use this word, but what does it really even mean? Because it's really like just a collection of all these other things, right? But it's been such a theme in my life. And so I'm all about, turning the pain into power. So I just took that on. I did that. And that was really good for me and healing for me. And again, it's like, with a mom and son, it's like the I'm okay, you're okay thing. So when I was okay, Leo was more okay, right? Yeah. So a lot of it had to do with how I was looking at his autism, and and just the perspective that I had. But once we started working together, and I started embracing, the part about him being unhappy, miserable, debilitating, episodes was horrible. I mean, is horrible when that still happens. And that's very painful for both of us, for our whole family, for his sister. We had a really bad episode the other day where, his sister was the one who really, I wasn't there, and she took care of him. She's 14. I mean, it's incredible. So though, that part is really hard, but I would love nothing more than to find like a middle ground so that parents can get to the place where I am and where you are, and and really see all the beauty in being different and what different brings us.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I just relate so much to what you said because unfortunately, like, honestly, again, I'm just kind of getting sick of the word autism because there's
Me
such a
too,
divide
right?
within the community, and
Yeah,
we use it so much that people know everybody knows the word autism. And even like again, my least favorite month is April because we talk about autism awareness, autism acceptance, and we talk about all the good things, right?
right.
Um, but society still doesn't understand the struggle of autism, right?
No,
And so I feel like and I think that's where a lot of adults with autism get very arrogant when they start, bashing moms or bashing ABA. I
yeah,
feel like it's because we as a society decided um, 10, 15, 20 years ago that when young child is diagnosed with autism, let's make it into a superpower. Let's treat it like something amazing, right? And I think being conditioned as you grow up with your parents telling you it's okay to have autism, obviously it is, but likening it to a superpower, that's going to develop, kind of a bigger ego, right? And I think that's where a lot of this hate in the autism community is coming from, is because they feel so entitled and protective of autism that they identify with it,
right,
um, that they don't want to hear anybody else's perspective because it's so personal to them. For me,
right,
I don't identify with autism, and I don't like the autism pride movement. Again, I just that separates the community even more, right?
right,
When you create this community, and you push for it to be accepted, but then you also have this aspect of no, leave us alone. Where does that leave us, right?
right.
And so
Confusing.
it's again the human experience. And I only 2 weeks ago did I finally come up with an answer because I've been interviewed with the question so many times of, Russell, what is autism?
Hmm.
And in the past, I'm like, well, I don't know. I only know what my autism is. I don't know what
Right,
autism is. But I think, in general terms, for anybody with autism, I think is what I say now is it's an exacerbation of the human condition. It's basically,
yeah,
everything a typical human goes through. It's just turned up, right? You feel
yeah.
more, you
That's
hurt
totally,
more, you see more, you're more
yeah.
aware, you think more. And so again, it's like I almost want to be like an anti-autism advocate, where it's
I
just
know.
about the
Yeah,
human experience, right? Let's treat
yeah.
it as humans. I don't have autism, I don't care what you have. Let's just be decent people. It's not that difficult.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally. It's actually so one of the other projects that I work on, it's a place called Get Cafe that a friend, it's a nonprofit, a friend and I helped her open it and I serve on the board. The idea is just inclusion,
Mhm.
right? I just much like that way better.
Yeah.
So whether you have autism, a disability, whether you're old, you're young, you're gay, you're straight, you're whatever color you are, you're included.
Mhm.
Everybody's included. And it's just this really awesome, safe place where everybody feels the same,
Mhm.
and everybody feels welcome.
Yeah.
So I try to focus on it like that.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, definitely. I think inclusion, I mean, if we focus on inclusion for just one community after another, it's going to take thousands of years for all
Right.
communities to.
Right.
But if we can just say let's have everyone included, right? I mean,
Right.
because again, there's this weird uh, sensitivity for autistic adults, and again, I abhor autistic adults. I'm just going to be blunt. I've
Please.
really never had good interactions with individuals on the spectrum or adults. And I don't want to say never. I'm being hyperbolic, but I think again there's this huge adverse reaction to separating autism from mental illness. I've heard many people say that they would, if it's just one thing they could make people aware of autism, is that it's not a mental illness.
Right.
Yeah, okay, it's a neurological disorder, but now just saying that it's not a mental illness, they're stigmatizing the mental health community, right? And a
Right.
lot of individuals with autism have mental diagnoses.
Right.
And so again, it's just this huge division. It's almost like an everlasting onion, the autism community, that they're just,
Yeah.
it keeps dividing itself, and there's so many layers that we're not making any progress. We're talking about stuff that doesn't need to be talked about, and we're not talking about stuff that does need to be talked about.
I
And I
couldn't
think,
agree more. You're exactly right.
yeah, and I think like if I were, it's like this, right? Like it's just talk, right? Like let's put aside the label of autism. Let's just connect and have a conversation, see where it takes us.
Yeah.
Because that's how you build respect for one another, and you can't have awareness and acceptance without respect for the individual first.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's a shame that I'm almost afraid to do that. I'm
Yeah.
always wanting to do that, but
Mhm.
I'm afraid because I don't want
Me too.
to get vilified or hurt. It's like a protection thing.
Yeah, I feel afraid. I honestly do. And I just started this thing called Confessions of a High and Functioning Autistic Guy, because I feel like I have so much I want to say, but for the past few years, I've been too afraid to say it, because
Yeah.
I don't want people to argue with me. Because
Yeah.
I'm fine arguing, right? But too many people don't argue. They just say, no, you're wrong. This is what,
They're mean.
right?
They're
Yeah.
mean.
And very few people know how to have a substantive back and forth dialogue. And social media is never a good place to have that
No,
dialogue.
it's
So
not.
it's almost like, how do I speak up while also initiating that sensitive dialogue that can be nurtured into progress? And I'm at a loss of how to do it, especially with COVID, because I would do it in person. In person is great at conferences,
Yeah.
workshops. But now
Yeah.
that those are still virtual, it's like, how do we do it? Because I think we have so many similar um, aspects of what you and Leo go through. I mean, my mom has been my hero, and the amount of mom shaming out there from adults on the spectrum, it just pisses me off, because the mom, it's not like the moms asked for this, right? It's not like they asked to be signed up for this. They're learning, they're wanting to help, right? That's all that matters. I don't care
We
what
just want to
anyone
help our kids. We just,
says.
it's like, so to see your child struggle is the most painful, and not know what to do about it is the most painful thing a mother can experience. It really is. So and then to be shamed for it on top of it is like, you just want to stay away from that with a 10-foot pole, because you're just worried about taking care of yourself and your family at some point. But
Yeah, and I can see the emotions, with you just
yeah.
talking about it. It's because I there prior to moving to LA, I was very, I'd see my mom every day, and just knowing that she's, I would usually go into another room to really have my meltdown, because again, I didn't want to. She's seen enough of me struggling, and so I feel for that. I would, again, like you said, if I'm good, you're good. I like, with me, if I started struggling and then I see my mom see me like that,
Yeah.
then I feel worse, because I feel
A
guilty for
lot.
making my
Yeah.
mom sad and emotional. And then she feels worse because she thinks
Right.
she's making me. And it's just this back and forth. And again, like you
Yeah.
said, there needs to be a bridge between how do we get adults with autism, advocates, if you want to call them self advocates, how do we get them to just, uh, how do we get everybody to just listen more? Listen.
Well, they could help. They
Yeah,
could help
yeah,
us actually
absolutely.
a lot.
Yeah, they have all the knowledge, right? But again, it's
Yeah.
like it's almost like a lot of them want to fight rather than just
Right.
making people, especially moms, give moms the insight into the complexities of the autistic mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's so I just want to say for you that, I mean, no matter what anybody says, your child better than anybody. Um, and I can't imagine, again, just from seeing my mom, I can't imagine how hard it is. It's a lifelong thing for you, just like it is for your kid, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to give a lot of credit to you and all the moms out there who struggle in different ways, but maybe just as much as their children, because, feeling helpless is one of the worst feelings in the world, especially when it comes to somebody you love the most in the world. So I just want to give you the validation you deserve for putting in the work, even in a very divisive community that can and hurt a lot of people.
Thank you. That really means a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. How did you come? How did you find out about cannabis? Have you been like a lifelong advocate for it? Was it when your Leo was born? How did you come into seeing cannabis as a vehicle to benefit symptoms of autism?
So I had been familiar with cannabis sort of my whole life, not professionally, of course, but just in, using it myself during certain times of my life. I have anxiety, so I didn't maybe realize it at the time, but which I think a lot of cannabis users end up figuring out that maybe I was self-medicating. So there was that, but I had never thought about it in terms of using it as a treatment medically for any symptoms associated with autism or otherwise, any other conditions. So literally, I was at home and I was watching, I think, the Sanjay Gupta special about Charlotte's Web. So that was really the first time I had heard about it. And I did sort of read some stuff in the news about it becoming legal in different states. And then Pennsylvania, where I am, ended up passing a medical marijuana law. And I read about it in the paper, literally. And, I had been for many years really researching and involved in, different kinds of more natural treatments for, some of the medical stuff that Leo was suffering from, but also, the anxiety and the OCD and the things that really like impede him and give him just a struggle in life. And during that time, Leo, I guess he was about 11, he was struggling so badly with these like debilitating anxiety, OCD, and it would turn into this meltdown where he would literally yell, scream, cry, throw himself down on the floor. And I have never felt so hopeless in my life. He was just unhappy and struggling. And, it was hard to see any gifts at all in life, not just for him, but I have a daughter who I was trying to take care of. I'm a single mom. I wasn't able to go to work or do anything like that. I was just, with Leo all the time. And it was sort of in that moment where I, was so desperate to find something to help him that it clicked, and the law was coming, and, I started researching right away. And of course, now in hindsight, it seems like the next logical step, right? Something natural that has almost no side effects. So I literally tried it alone by myself at home. And it worked, right? And when I say it worked so well for him that for the first time in months, he was calm and happy. And I knew I was on to something there.
That's great. And so how is, if you were to pick one symptom of autism that Leo struggles with the most, like for me, I call autism anxiety, OCD, and depression like the three-headed monster. They all feed off of
Yeah.
Is there one specifically that he struggles with more so than the other though?
OCD.
Okay.
OCD is the poor kid will wake up, like he'll go to bed thinking or perseverating on something. He'll wake up in the middle of the night for a second and be talking. It's just his brain. He'll just be talking about that thing. And it's just, no matter how I try to comfort him, if I could find ways to help him with that, I would be so happy. He still, so what happened, so when I tried the cannabis and we started using cannabis, he went from having these episodes almost every day to like one in 30 days. It was very clear, his mood changed, right? He was unhappy and then he was happy, and it wasn't all perfect, and not all cannabis is the same, and you can use too much and all that kind of stuff. But I knew that I had to find, some different formulations that would be a good fit for him. But OCD is, it's like the bane of his existence, exactly like you were saying. That's why I can relate. And I feel it in myself. I have, some remnants of OCD, and I know his dad does, and the grandparents do too. But his is just magnified for some reason.
Yeah, and I think for me, I think for a lot of individuals on the spectrum who have OCD, again, OCD is the most debilitating disorder I have. But it's also a coping mechanism. I think if I didn't have autism and I just had OCD alone, I think it would be a little bit easier to handle. But with autism going hand in hand with needing familiarity, needing routine, needing schedules, the OCD is very apropos to fixate on that because it likes rigidity, right? It likes things the
Right.
same. And so for me, OCD is like half the time I only until I started smoking cannabis, and I never thought I would take part in cannabis. It was just last year I started smoking. And so it's been not even 12 months. And the amount of insight I've gained into my OCD has been astronomical.
Wow.
When I smoke, my OCD becomes visible. I can see it. Oftentimes when I'm sober, I honestly don't know if I'm doing something because I actually want to do it or if my OCD is telling me to do it because it
Hmm.
somehow disguises itself as me. And it's also like a game of whack-a-mole. I feel like I have it cornered here, but then it morphs and pops up in another area of my life. And so for me, cannabis totally almost separates me from my OCD, where I can instantly tell when I'm high, that's my OCD, and I don't need to pay attention to you
Wow.
right now. And it's so liberating. How do you administer the cannabis to Leo? Because he's 16, right?
He's 16, and when he started taking, he was 11. So he doesn't smoke.
Okay.
He uses tinctures.
Okay.
So just a tincture under his tongue is usually our best bet.
Okay. And what ratio do you like? Do you switch up the ratios or? And for people who don't know, the ratios are usually, the extent to how much CBD per THC is in a tincture.
Yeah. So, as soon as I discovered that it was something that would work for him, and the medical programs take a little while to get, I mean, a year to get set up because of our legislation. Literally, state by state, we have to grow the cannabis here before we can dispense it.
Okay.
So I went on a mission, and we became like this like underground group of moms, and we would take turns going to Colorado, California, and bringing back different formulations and different things to try. And parents, when the legislation became active, parents started going into dispensaries here for like young children, and they're walking out with like vape pens and RSOs. And I was having a nervous breakdown because I'm like, no, that's not safe. And I ended up finding partners here with growers in Pennsylvania. And what we did is we did a lot of surveys within my local community here. And we did a lot of research. I worked with a scientist, Dr. Aludari Adamuso, who is now the CEO of Zalera Therapeutics, which is a cannabinoid-based medicine company. So they make formulations for a lot of different medical conditions. So we gathered all of this information, and we ended up making 2 different formulations. And the line is called Hope. And so there's a Hope 1 and a Hope 2. So the Hope
Like
1,
your own product.
yeah, here.
Very
So
cool.
we have,
Okay.
yeah, Hope 1 and Hope
Okay.
2.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
very, very cool. Very cool. So, there's no one size fits all in cannabis, but what I really did want to do was create a safe starting point, especially for parents who are working with younger kids, to go in and say, okay, this is a product that people in our community use. We know that it's safe. It's made, in writing Cooking with Leo, I like to use like our organic ingredients and all that, kind of clean lab tested stuff that goes along with it. So we wanted to make a really safe, allergen free. Leo has a ton of food allergies product. So that's what we did there. I also found or I do find when Leo's really upset or really agitated, sometimes just THC alone or a THC tincture is like a good as needed kind of medicine.
Yeah, I have, for some reason, CBD does not work well for me. I actually need the high for, um, I get so congested with my emotions because I have a hard time. I'm great at feeling the gamut of emotions. Like I'm so sensitive, but to be able to process those emotions is very difficult for me. So it's almost like I get backed up. And when I need that psychoactive effect to be able to
Yeah.
almost blow the top off and just kind of shake things up and make it more fluid. And so like the CBD, like, well, let me ask you, do you smoke? Do you take cannabis at all?
I'm a cannabis patient in Pennsylvania. Yes.
Okay, so what works for you? Like CBD, THC, and then also for Leo, is he more CBD inclined, or you obviously said sometimes you use THC?
Yeah. So he's way more THC inclined. And we, definitely tried like the over the counter CBDs and ordered stuff online, and it made him more agitated.
Yeah.
And his communication is not, he has functional communication, but he really can't tell me how he's feeling. I have to observe and take in, I'm sort of like, sometimes I feel like we're like ET and Elliot, if you're familiar with the
Yeah.
ET movie.
Yeah.
Like I'm feeling and vibing off of him to see where he's at. And it's like the I'm okay, you're okay thing too. Like I notice he's really sensitive to my anxiety and what I have going on as well. But he needs THC, and most of the kids that are in our community or the parents, that we're THC people. In fact, the Hope 2 is really what Leo uses most, and it's a 5-to-1 THC to
Okay.
CBD.
Okay.
And they each have special blends of terpenes, right, that fit kind of different effects that you're looking for. But even like a 1-to-1, the Hope 1 is 1-to-1, that's too much CBD for him. For some kids, it works. Or for some people who have like more of a ADHD type of profile, and maybe they struggle a little less with the stronger kind of, thoughts, then a 1-to-1 can help them more. But we're definitely, and um, there's a couple of formulations that I like and I've become attached to in Pennsylvania here. One is called Shine. So it's more like you would relate it to like a sativa, and they make tinctures too. And Breathe, which is more of a half and half
Okay.
CBD and THC.
Okay. And the terpenes, not many people know terpenes. Like when I was in Nevada, because I just moved to LA, when I was up in Nevada, I'd go in and to the dispensaries, and I'd tell the bud tenders, this is kind of the terpenes I need. And even the bud tenders were kind of confused at what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So can you break down for people what terpenes are? And from my understanding, they are really just if you want to really get specific and alleviate very specific symptoms, that you'll it's all boils down to the terpenes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the different formulations each have their own set of terpenes. So terpenes are essentially like flavonoids, and they're also in fruits as well as cannabis. So, for example, if you're looking at a fruit, the terpene, and it creates the different smells that you're finding in the different strains of cannabis. So if you're, smelling a lemon, like you're getting it's like a limonene or a lemon terpene kind of thing. So really, I mean, you could use terpenes, in your life or as medicines, probably isolated as well. If I've never done that, but I think that might be something interesting. So the terpenes are really what give the cannabis the different properties, the different smell, the different effects, calming, whether it be calming. So, for example, Hope 2 has terpenes that are more calming and sedating, as opposed to maybe the Hope 1 that has terpenes that are more creative and alerting.
And what what terpenes would be better? Because from my understanding, I think for me anyway, linalool and limonene or limonene are both anti-anxiety. Is that correct?
I think so. And it depends on, I mean, myrcene is a big one for calming.
Mango, I'm a big mango fan, and mangoes have a lot of myrcene in them. And
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
yeah, so I researched it, and they say if you eat a mango about a half hour before smoking, you'll get much higher when you smoke because you're already
Wow.
myrcene in your system.
That makes a lot of sense now that you're saying that. And it's funny, my daughter loves mangoes. But it's interesting because you could get, and that's why I like the kind of formulation model and medical model a little better, because you can get different types of flour, and even though they're going to call it gorilla glue, that's a good one. I like that one personally. Every time. Do you like that?
I love it. I use it.
Yeah, GG4 is a big one in our group. Parents love that.
Yeah.
Using GG4.
Yeah.
But you're going to get a variation, right? Of like, if you get your flour from this grower or that grower or this state or that state, you're going to get a variation. It's never going to be exactly the same. But when you use, formulations, you can get exactly the same consistency every time.
And that's what because in Nevada, again, I would just, I don't have a medical card yet. But when I would go into a dispensary, no matter what growers from, no matter what production company, they would always have the breakdown of the terpene profile.
Yes.
Then I went
on
down
the label.
Yeah. And so that's what I thought it would be like that wherever you could buy cannabis. But in LA, the dispensaries I've been to, no terpene profile whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like it's like almost akin to buying a bottle of pills, but you don't know what pills are in there because
Totally.
I can go by the strain. But again, like you said, if it's from a grower, the terpenes are going to vary no matter what, if the strain is the same.
Yeah.
So what are your feelings about like the federal regulation, but decriminalization, and
Yeah.
how do you feel about, there's a huge concern that big pharma is going to come in and take over this industry. What do you think the best way forward is to serve the marginalized population, such as individuals with autism? How do you feel about the growing popularity? Because I don't like the popularity, honestly. I think it's more of a trend than anything. It's giving people a reason to just smoke for fun. But for me, I don't smoke for fun, right? I smoke to function, right?
Right.
How do you feel about the societal acceptance, I guess?
So, I mean, personally, I think cannabis should be legal. I think that it should be descheduled. It doesn't match any of the qualities that in the schedule that it's under at all. I think there's a huge amount of, political and societal push that pushed it that way. I think that people with medical conditions should 100% be able to legally access cannabis in a, and it shouldn't be like a really difficult, horrible process. I mean, you have these families of young children, whether they have cancer or autism or other really significant challenges that, we can walk into a psychiatrist's office and walk out with an antipsychotic in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And cannabis is a natural thing, and it's just crazy that it's illegal. However, in what I do, it's not about recreation or adult use. And I really think, it's been very hard. It's not easy to find a partner in this big industry, right? To say, okay, we'll make you like a little formulation for people who have OCD or anxiety or, like autism related symptoms. So I'm really, really grateful that I did find the partner. And that partner is a cannabis company who will likely make drugs at some point, pharmaceutical drugs. And, initially I was very much, free the plan and let's keep it natural. But I do think that with all of the stuff that goes out there that's not tested and not regulated, there is a dangerous place. So I've come to a place where I'm really excited and hopeful that we'll have both natural like dispensary products available and pharmaceutical products at some point. I do think there's a space for both.
Yeah.
And I do think, a 3-year-old child shouldn't be shopping at a dispensary. I mean, that we just don't have a choice right now. Us, we're adults. We make that choice if we want to, but it is a really challenging place to be for certain patient populations. At Hope Grows for Autism, we work with states who aren't legal yet to advocate for legalization. We work with states who already have legal programs to make sure they include autism as a qualifying condition. And we do work at the federal level to try to push things along that way as well. Yeah. And I really think like we can accomplish that in the next 18 months to 2 years, at least for the autism community.
Absolutely. I fully believe that. And it's interesting. I feel like, in 10 years, it will probably be I'll be thinking like, wow, I wish I had this when I was a teenager that I could, utilize, because they'll probably have pills and it'll be totally legal. At the same time, again, I have a fear that right now, the one thing that is a byproduct of my cannabis use is how empowering it feels for me to be able to self-medicate instead of, because I know what's best for me, right? But it's kind of dehumanizing having to go to a psychiatrist who doesn't know me to ask for permission for medication, and half the time they deny that permission. And so to be able to, again, kind of have my own apothecary where I can mix different strains and everything to really self-medicate. One of my fears is, in 10 years when, this industry is really booming, what restrictions are they going to put in place? Am I going to need a prescription for cannabis? Well, so that's one thing I have a fear for. Do you think that will ever happen? Like, you probably know more than me since you're more in the industry. Do you have a fear that like prescriptions will be needed, or do you think they'll allow this to continue?
I think that there will be both.
Yeah.
I think adult use is, so far along. I don't think that that's going away. I don't, until we get federal legalization, it won't be available everywhere like that. So you who live in California, or, that they have adult use there, I don't think that'll go away. And I think that that's an industry that, is making enough money that they'll never want to go away. And I do think that there will be both. I absolutely think that it's almost like you can walk into a pharmacy like a Rite Aid or CVS, right? And you can go to the counter and you can pick up your prescription, or you can go to the aisle and you can get, ibuprofen or other things like that. I absolutely think there's a thriving room for both.
Yeah, that gives me hope, because I'm so new to like all of this. Again, I only started smoking just under a year ago, and I'm just, before that, I never, like, again, I my whole life I adhered to the social stigmas behind cannabis, because I didn't know about it. And it's usually when you don't know about something that you tend to stigmatize it, because we fear the unknown, right? I never thought in a million years I would be a daily smoker. I never even smoked a cigarette prior to last year. And so I guess my question to you is, what is one thing you wish people would know or be more aware of when it comes to cannabis use, whether for yourself, whether for Leah, whether just the general population at large? What's one thing you would like to make clear to people about cannabis use?
Definitely that the majority of people using cannabis are not stoners or looking to get high, that they are using it medicinally, probably whether they realize it or not. And in autism in particular, that kids are not going around smoking joints. People don't understand that.
Yeah.
That's not what's happening. It's that it truly has medicinal properties, that there is research, there is enough research out there to prove that. And, we're not a bunch of stoners. There's nothing to be shameful or afraid of.
Yeah, that's again, it's like even in my obviously like on social media or in my presentations, I have no problem talking about it. But in my
Yeah.
personal day-to-day life, it gets tough because they're like, if I go on a date with somebody, it's hard for me to even bring that up, and because I can get their side because I used to be there where if somebody
Right.
told me they smoke weed, I'd be like, really? And because I didn't know
Right.
anything about it. So yeah, it is. I think the biggest thing I like about cannabis too is it just I think way too much. And that's very typical with individuals on the spectrum. We tend to have a high intellect, which can lead to a lot of rumination. Unfortunately, intellect and ego are both double-edged swords. So for me, it puts my intellect in perspective. It stops the rumination, and it really just clears up my mind. If I had an analogy, it would be like if my head was a garden. Prior to my cannabis use, I would have my flower, right? But it would be overgrown with weeds.
Mm-hmm.
When I smoke, all those weeds are pulled away and it's just a beautiful flower. And that's how I feel after I smoke. I feel much more light. I feel like it's my true self. And I know it's my true self because prior to smoking, the best moments of my life, whether it be like on a perfect date with somebody or after a great speaking engagement, when you just know that this is where it's at, that's
Yeah.
how I feel when I smoke. And it's almost like all my symptoms it's not like they disappear, but again, I get a more objective outlook and I'm able to process them better, which helps the true self rise above the symptoms because they're not
Yeah.
getting in the way of it. Talk to me about you mentioned endocannabinoid dysregulation, correct?
Correct.
So what is that? I've not heard of the dysregulation before.
So that means, so we all have an endocannabinoid system in our bodies. It's already there. It's naturally occurring. So that means, and we do have some research that tells us, and hopefully we'll be doing more, that the endocannabinoid system in people with autism is sometimes dysregulated and not working properly. So when we introduce cannabis into that dysregulated system, the system is working better and working properly, and that helps regulate the rest of the systems in our body.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because yeah, I feel again when I'm sober, I oftentimes feel like I'm just the odd man out and like I'm very different from others. I'm not in harmony with my body. I just feel off, right? Even on a good day. When I smoke, I feel much more connected, whether it's through my nervous system, whether it's the mind body connection. Honestly, when I'm high, I feel like everybody else has autism and I'm the one who's normal. And it
Well, that's
fluctuates.
exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love what you said, because I've been trying to explain that. Sometimes what I say to people in trainings is like, it's almost like when Leo doesn't have cannabis, he almost seems like he's high.
Mhm.
But then when he uses cannabis, it's like, he's dysregulated. So it comes back to the regulated state. So
Mhm.
it's like the opposite. So
Yeah.
I try to, but, having someone like you who can articulate so well your experience and how it affects your body and your mind is so important um, to bringing the medicine forward. We have a board member at Hope Grows, Andy Moritz, who I'd love to introduce you to because I think you guys would get along awesome.
Yeah.
But she is also an adult who has autism who uses cannabis, and she's been so helpful in articulating how it makes her feel and how it works for her. And I think we need so much more of that, because
Absolutely.
again, like I'm with Leo, I'm like, translating or helping translate, because I see it,
Mhm.
you know, but he can't articulate that the way that you can, which is so cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's so cool for me too. Again, it's like the minute I smoke, um, it's almost like the lid just opens up. Like I have a hinge on the top of my head, it opens up and everything is put on the table in front of me. And just that, because I'm very like in tune with energy and spirituality, like I'll get visions when I'm high. I can't, Erica, I cannot tell you how much I've learned about myself because the biggest, almost the bane of my existence up until recently has been that all my disabilities are invisible. So every time I would struggle, I would ask why. I had no closure. I was left to try to either figure out why I was struggling, which I could never figure out, which then I would get depressed and it was just a vicious cycle. But
Yeah.
there have been times when I smoke, and it's not like when I have a bad day and I smoke, like I want people to understand that smoking for me anyway does not, I'm not escaping anything. If I'm having a bad day and I smoke, I'm still going to feel all those unpleasant emotions, right? But I'm going to be able to process and understand them more with compassion. Too often when I'm sober, I push it away and I get that
Yeah,
friction of not wanting it there.
you're right.
But there have been times when I've smoked where I remember one time distinctly, I looked in the mirror, um, and I was high and I was having a really difficult day. But I looked in the mirror and I saw all these holes throughout my entire body, just black voids. And I looked at myself almost like I was a totally different person, and I realized that's all my trauma, that's all my symptoms, that's all my social deficits, that's all my bitterness towards society from being a social outcast. No wonder I struggle so much. I visually had, for the first time in my life, my invisible disabilities became visible in that mirror,
That is
and that's
amazing.
because of cannabis. And so again, it's like, I'll tell somebody I smoke cannabis daily and they'll be like, but to me, it's curriculum. It's curriculum. It's like opening up a school textbook and getting to work. And the personal growth I've attained, I don't think I could have made this move to LA if I had not discovered the benefits of cannabis. I really don't.
That's incredible. People
Yeah,
believe that. I mean, hear what you just said.
yeah,
That's, you just made like a huge life change, and that's amazing.
it is. It is because I think so often, and this is where I become vehemently passionate about, you know, doing what you just said, speaking the experience, lived experience when it comes to cannabis, because a lot of individuals, especially adults on the spectrum, whether they're, more severe or whatever kind of autism they have, there's a huge lack of confidence, right? Um, for many reasons. And cannabis has given me that confidence to just be me, not try to fit in. Yeah, I want to belong, obviously, but I don't
Right.
want to fit in. I really don't.
Right.
But oftentimes I feel pressure to. Cannabis, again, it alleviates all those weeds in my garden where my flower can just shine. I like my flower, and too often I wonder if other people don't like my flower. But when I'm high, I don't care what other people think.
Right. I know.
And I wonder what, yeah, I sometimes wonder if everybody on planet Earth was high, right?
Yeah.
What would the Earth be like? Because it's interesting, and I'd love to hear your experience with this. Because when people drink, or use alcohol as an outlet, let's say, it tends to bring out whatever's repressed and suppressed, and they can become bitter, they can become stupid, they can become funny. With cannabis, I find that most people don't, unless they smoke a lot of sativa, right? Most people don't have any underlying emotions that pop up. But I haven't been around too many people that smoke. What is your experience? How would you compare someone getting drunk, shifting to a drunken state, as to maybe that same person smoking and shifting to a state of high?
Yeah. I mean, so again, I think, you want to first look at the difference between using it medicinally and recreationally, right? So if it depends, most people use alcohol recreationally, but I guess if you become dependent, you're, using it more than that. I mean, if you just look at the basic, um, elements. I mean, alcohol is just like poisonous and bad for you, right? And cannabis is medicinal. So comparing them would be like really challenging. I think there would be a lot more love in the world and a lot less fighting and misbehaving if people used more cannabis instead of alcohol.
Absolutely.
I hardly drink at all anymore. I mean, I used to like drink occasionally, but it's not even agreeing with me. It just doesn't fit my body. It doesn't feel right, you know? And I think, you know, for me and what I've seen, I mean, cannabis seems to bring a more peaceful connectedness um, with people as opposed to alcohol, which kind of brings more of like a rowdy, loud,
Yeah.
sometimes angry
Mhm.
kind of situation.
That's a great point. Yeah, alcohol seems to almost inflame people's egos, right? And it's
Yeah,
separate, and they kind of bump heads. Cannabis, I mean, my favorite thing to do is have a joint and just have a really good conversation with somebody. And that connectedness, that human interaction is so profound, and it's a great bonding experience too. And I firmly believe for individuals who, have autism, if they when they can learn more about the plant and use it to their own liking, that
right.
think a lot of the social deficits that come with autism um, will be alleviated. Again, I think it's a great, like, if I had my dream world, I would create social groups for teenagers, adults on the spectrum to just smoke a joint all together. Obviously, taking into account which terpenes would affect them in certain ways, but I think that social experience is very needed in the autism community. And for me, cannabis has been that bridge, right, to socializing and creating
Yeah,
personal relationships where in the past I couldn't even leave my house. Now, if I smoke, I break free from all my rigidity. I'm not going to fall into a pattern. I'm not going to have the same thought processes that have gotten me trouble in the past. I'm not going to want to self sabotage. I am just free to do what I truly want. And that, like I said earlier, I oftentimes don't know what I truly want because my OCD is always morphing
right.
itself. To get that clarity of mind is huge. And it's funny what you said earlier about, you're almost high when Leo's almost high when he's sober. Again, I have so much going on here when I'm sober that yeah,
Right.
cannabis brings me clarity, whereas people tend to think that it brings you this altered state where you can't function. I
Right.
function so much better when I'm high. I just really do.
Well, I think it, releases your inhibitions,
Hmm.
cannabis.
Yeah.
I remember like sort of in the beginning, Leo started talking a lot more after he
Mhm.
started using cannabis. And I was thinking to myself, like, how's that possible? What is that? And then I was talking to my partner who's the scientist, and he's, explaining to me that, when he's releasing his inhibitions, the rest of his system is working better,
Mhm.
right? So things are flowing better and he can
Yeah.
get more out, it's
Yeah.
really
It,
incredible.
it is. Yeah. I feel like, again, I'm a big fan of analogies, if you haven't noticed, but it's like when I'm sober, I'm the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz, and I'm running out of oil and I'm just like rusting.
Yeah.
Cannabis, I'm all oiled up. I can go, I can function, and that is huge. That again, I am finally able to say what I want to people without, because I've been hurt a lot in my childhood by people who just didn't get that weird kid with autism, right? So I
Yeah.
was conditioned to just not speak because I would always kind of get berated. And so with cannabis, that past trauma is still there, but again, I can see it and I can push it to the side and say, I'm just
Yeah.
going to speak now, right? And so again, it's very healing. Cannabis, again, we're obviously talking about autism mostly right now, but PTSD, there are just so many things where cannabis heals. It truly heals. Whereas
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals, I'm on Clonopin. That hasn't healed a damn thing. I've been on Clonopin for 17 years.
It's
And that, but
impossible to get off of, right?
yeah, and you just grow more dependent on it, and it never
Yeah.
fixes anything. And even if I need to
Um,
take a little bit extra, I still got to wait 2 hours. Where smoking it hits you like that.
yeah.
And so there are just so many aspects of cannabis that again are not being talked about when it comes to um, the medicinal side, right?
Right.
So it's very interesting to see where the dialogue will go from here because I love what you're doing. Thank you again, Erica, for your time.
Thank
And
you
yeah,
for
I
having
will
me.
absolutely. I think we talked a lot about a lot of stuff that will resonate with many people easily.
Okay.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.